Take it away, Kerry.
Okay. Um, Thank you very much, Joe. I just wanted to do some brief, maybe more in-depth intros. Brooke is a baseball content creator who burst on the TikTok social media scene in June of 2025, where she amassed a following of over 27,000 and more than 500,000 views with highly entertaining stat-based commentary. 2 months later, she was blazing the trail on Instagram, where she now has 87.1 thousand followers. She's a professional interviewer, including interviews with Carlos Pena, Joe Girardi, Miguel Tejada, Junior Noboa, Dale Murphy, and JT Snow, among others. Joe LaFlamme is a baseball content provider with a background as a sports journalist, baseball analyst, and professional screenwriter. He's logged more than 20 years of experience in film and television, and his unique blend of baseball and cinematic expertise shapes the narrative style of Brooke Knows Ball, elevating it beyond traditional sports media. He amassed more than 160 million views in 11 weeks by exposing the foreign substance scandal. Then he showed MLB that they could enforce a rule from the 1920 rule book, which prompted them to create foreign substance checks that we now see today. Jointly, Brooke and Joel operate as a dynamic duo, combining on-camera charisma with deep baseball insight and storytelling craft. Perry Husband is the author of the Downright Filthy Pitching series, which uncovers the patented science of effective velocity, which has been used by MLB coaches, pitchers, and hitters. As a player, Perry won the MVP of the Division II College World Series in 1984, where he captained the NCAA champs, Cal State University Northridge Matadors. He was drafted by the Minnesota Twins in the 16th round of the 1984 draft as a second baseman. So, good evening to you all, and thanks for participating in the Rocky Mountain Saver virtual meeting. I'm going to ask questions of all three of you. Feel free to jump in as you see fit, and then at the end we'll open it up to some Q&A from the audience. So as before we begin, I just want to share my screen and we'll take a look at a sample of Brooke's work. Oops, I did the wrong thing here. Where'd my screen go? Share screen. It's not giving me the one that I want.
Technology never works for us whenever it's needed, really. That's like the story of any presenter's life.
It's always the case.
Okay, I'm going to share this and then we'll.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, I don't know if I'm sharing the correct screen. There we go.
Oh,
Okay. So I'm going to start this in the first couple of words, may get cut off, but here we go.
I think the audio is muted.
Yeah, Carrie, we're not getting the audio. There might be a
Kerry,
special.
you have to enable audio when you share. So
Yeah,
you know,
that's
good.
stop sharing and then enable your audio before you share. And share again.
I'm loving the dogs, though.
That video is far better. It's more interesting.
Yeah.
Can we just watch the dog videos instead? Is that all right?
Okay.
Gary, you should get some ideas for your dog. I don't think he'd be as cute. I don't know if he'd like the cutesiness of it, though, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not. He might look at him as a treat.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
That's
let's try
dog-
this again here.
That's dogs no ball. That's a different.
Yeah. There you go.
I think they're all born to no ball.
Yeah.
Okay, now is there a trick to having the audio come on when the audio is supposed to come
I'm
on?
gonna go into share settings, Kerry. And there should be a an option to enable the audio or share the audio as well. Worst case, you just turn the volume of your computer up really loud.
See, this is
Can
why
you-
we add captions to our videos because we know like there's certain scenarios where you can't listen to the audio or maybe, people
Oh,
at
there it is.
something like that are trying not to be caught, but what were you say?
I was gonna say, can you just provide the audio?
Well, yeah, I should just do the audio for it, huh?
Yeah, do you have it memorized? All right, I think we're all set. Let's give this a shot here. Oops, it started too soon here. So
Ever fell in love with the geometry of the game, there was him. Brooks Robinson, the human vacuum cleaner, arguably the greatest defensive baseball player of all time. Sure, some say Ozzie, some say Andrew, and I get it, the crown has many contenders. But Brooks, he brought his lunch pail to third base every single day. Not for flash, not for fame, but for work. And what a worker he was. He played the hot corner like it was sacred ground. Hands like steel traps, footwork like a dancer, heart like no one else. In a world of stars, Brooks was a craftsman, an artist of instinct and preparation. He didn't just field grounders, he devoured them. He made impossible look routine. And that's why I call myself Brooke. Not just because I love the game, but because I honor the way he played it. Brooks Robinson inspired me not to seek attention, but to respect the game. So when I say Brooke knows ball, I say it with a nod to the man who truly knew ball in its purest, grittiest, most beautiful form. Brooks played the game the way it was meant to be played, with humility, with consistency, with grace that never needed a spotlight. He didn't talk about greatness, he just showed up and was. That's what I aspire to be. That's why I chose the name. Because Brooks knew ball. And that's where this all began. When I say Brooke knows ball,
They're here.
okay, and let's watch another one here. This is going to have some local flavor because it involves a former Rocky.
hey, we've never seen anything like Ohtani before. And yeah, Shohei Ohtani is a once-in-a-universe talent. But 2 decades before he showed up, there was a pitcher quietly bending baseball reality. For those who know, this is nothing new. But for those who do not, let me introduce you to Mike Hampton. This dude was more than just a dynamic pitcher. For a period of time, he was equally dominant at the plate. He was a movement the sport wasn't ready for. Let's start with the resume. Cy Young runner-up, Gold Glove winner, 5-time Silver Slugger that is not a pitcher with a bat, that is a full athlete trapped inside a rotation spot. We talk about 5-tool players, right? Well, Hampton had 7. He could locate, dominate, defend, and then walk into the batter's box and become one of the scariest hitters on the field. In 2001, he hit .291 with 7 homers and an .891 OPS. I'm gonna say that one again. An .891 OPS for a pitcher that is insane, all while throwing over 200 innings. And in 2002, he backed it up with another elite hitting season. He hit a ridiculous .344 that is higher than any position player hit in 2025. Consistency, power, contact, swagger, he had Ohtani energy while Ohtani was still in diapers. Hampton forced people to rethink what a pitcher could be. Not just an arm, but a complete athlete who refused to be put in a box. And that is the lesson that still hits today. Your position doesn't define your potential, and your greatness doesn't wait for the game to catch up. So, when you watch Ohtani now, remember the guy who planted the seeds. Before Ohtani made history, Mike Hampton made history as well by showing us a glimpse of the future. And Brooke knows ball. People love to say we've
All right.
Hey, those were some of the nicest things I've heard about Mike Hampton in years.
He helped
Am I
the
right,
Mets
Rockies
go to the
fans?
World Series in 2000. Don't forget, he was a hell of a Met pitcher too. So
He was, and then he became a Rocky
yes, he did.
and scene.
So, Brooke, it's been a couple of exciting years for you. Tell me how you first got started and how that all happened.
So, let me introduce you guys to my production partner, Joel. We're like this dynamic duo. Of course, people know me by my face, but Joel is also behind the scenes, and we run the page entirely together. And so we had started this back in TikTok was June of last year, and then August was Instagram. And we really started it because Joel's background is in screenwriting, my background is in entertainment and marketing, and there's a couple different reasons, right? But the first is because we wanted to tell more narrative stories within baseball. We wanted to bring back that storytelling aspect. Joel has a baseball TV series that he had written, so we were going through the pitching process in Hollywood, and it's not always the most fun to do it that way, but we were going through it and realizing that we really wanted to go through it with a baseball audience in mind and making sure that everything was authentic and the way that we wanted to tell it. So that's why we created the social media channel, was to be able to give essentially little short stories of what we eventually want to do narratively long form. And yeah, I don't know. That's when we
Pretty
had
good
started it.
explanation.
That's it in a nutshell, I suppose, as far as why we started it when we started it. But it has been a whirlwind of a year so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Joel, for you, just kind of being behind the scenes with some of the success that you've seen, how what kind of feelings are you getting with that?
Oh, it's been great because we've been able to do narrative stuff like showcase players from the past, and that always really hits well with baseball fans to see those players from a previous generation and be able to like communicate generationally. We see a lot of like grandparents talking to grandkids or generations interacting with the past, and that really, that's I think there's a missing element to baseball content right now. Like we try to do family friendly content as much as possible because we don't want to eliminate the 8-year-old from consuming the content, right? I think you see a lot of sports right now where, gambling will take the forefront or something. They'll try to spin it in a far more adult way. And you're like, hey, there could be a 9-year-old sitting there and falling in love with the game, and you're kind of excluding them in a way. So we try to make sure that our place is uh, family friendly and a friendly place for all fan bases to kind of come and just talk the game.
So one of the things that I like about Brooks Knows Ball is that it makes you think, and I think when you watch it, your content kind of let your mind go in a lot of different directions, and I know that you're getting a lot of responses to your post. What do you think about the fan reaction, and which of your posts seems to have gotten the most fan reaction?
Getting the fan reaction is it's so fulfilling because Joel alluded to it, but we'll get grandparents reaching out to us saying, I haven't been able to talk about this level of the game with my grandson before, and now you're opening this opportunity because he's coming to me with this story and asking me, Grandpa, like, talk to me about this player that you saw when you were my age. Or we'll have little league coaches reach out to us and say, we're playing a Brooke Knows Ball video before coaching, and it's just to see that it has that kind of impact or to spark conversation around a topic, right? Like we always want people to be able to have an open discussion over something and not just adopt an opinion just for adopting it, but that helping to open up that doorway to do more research on your own and figure what players are really interesting to you. And it doesn't have to stop at the current modern day players. There's so much history of baseball that we can look into. So that's always been just to get that type of reaction has been really fulfilling for us.
I'd say she's from Orange County, and something that's really interesting is that we did a Tyler Skaggs video, more not about the tragedy and like just the loss of a player, right? We focused on the game side of it. We didn't go into deep depth of it, but we just focused on that follow-up game and how, insane it was. Mike Trout hit a home run. They threw a combined no-hitter as a team. And it was just this really emotional moment. And we found insane kind of like the amount of people who reached out to us that said this was like a cathartic release for them because they've been holding on to something for so long. Was that was always one that's really high on our list.
Yeah. And I think like the way that we tell stories, we want it to invoke emotion, right? And we want it to hopefully be a positive emotion. But there's, like to what Joel said, it being like a cathartic release, to hear that a video of ours has given that to someone is, I mean, that's like the biggest compliment that you could possibly give. So that one was definitely a really impactful video that stands out in both of our minds.
So it's obvious that your posts require a lot of research and development. So what is that process like from the idea generation to the actual presentation online?
We talk a lot with each other, lots of brainstorming and conversations in that way. But I think a lot of the times, like when it comes to the statistical side, it's usually from the eye test and then back working a stat into it to fit, like a lot of 80s, 90s, a small ball approach that we will do on the page is because we're trying to quantify a feeling that somebody talks about. But then when it comes to more of the narrative and the storytelling arcs, it's just different rabbit holes, right? So sometimes it'll come from a suggestion that somebody has messaged us or said in the comments. Other times it's from a real life experience, or like a memory, a childhood memory.
Other times a team in the Dominican Republic will reach out to us and we go and we meet Perry down in the DR. And we're just, we're rather spontaneous at times. And we like that. We like that fans can chime in and say, hey, you never talked about this yet. And we're like, yeah, we haven't. Maybe that's the next thing we talk about. So, we love that fan base can really dictate what we jump on.
Hey, if we figure if we find it interesting, someone else does, and vice versa. So
So, Brooke, sports journalism and sports podcasts seem to be pretty male dominated. So, how do you feel being a woman in that world?
it's nice to be able to represent women in this space. And the first time that I ever got recognized, I think was actually at the World Series game 1 in Toronto. And it was this woman that came up to me and she was like, "Oh my gosh, you're Brooke Dusvall. That's so cool. Like it's nice to see another woman that's excited about baseball." And I get to like watch it with my husband. And I'm like, that is so awesome. I love having those kinds of experiences. But at the same time, everyone in this space has been so welcoming. It doesn't feel like I have to try to kick something down, like that. People are so welcoming and wanting to be able to help and help women in the sport area rise. So it's been a really nice experience and just very fulfilling in a lot of different ways.
So you do some deep dives into statistics, and at Saber, we love statistics. I'm going to throw a couple of your post topics at you, and maybe you can explain them to the group. And in many cases, you have some other maybe better ideas.
I don't know about
that. So, exit velocity versus true exit velocity.
Okay, EV versus TEV. So when it comes to the different types of stats on our page, we try to not only quantify things to talk about different feel, right? But also we're looking to do is show like longevity. We're trying to show consistency in players. And so a lot of our stats will start to emulate that. Joel, if you want to go a little bit more into detail, he's my stat guy as far as we talk about it, and then his brain is like this mathematical statistician, and I adore it.
Yeah, the simplest way of putting it is that we try to create a statistic that instead of looking at somebody who goes 1 for 10 with hitting a ball 100 miles an hour, one out of 10, you strike out 9 times, and your exit velocity is 100. We try to look at strikeouts as being, that's a zero value, not something that you should simply ignore, right? So we try to bring strikeouts into play to say, TEV is more of a quality of contact as opposed to just simply what exit velocity gives you. Because exit velocity will tell you that O'Neal Cruz is the best hitter in baseball. I think we know that that's not true. He does hit the ball an absolute ton, but he doesn't hit the ball very often. So what our stat kind of comes in and does is it says, here are the players that give you a much better quality of contact. They consistently hit the ball. They consistently put the ball in play, because there's just nothing can happen positively off of a strikeout.
And we like a good analogy that we like to talk about with it is like if you're taking a test. Right now with exit velocity, it's basically saying you have 10 questions and you answer 6 of them, so you get 6 out of 6. So it's 100%. And we're sitting there and we're like, no, but you still got 4 wrong because you didn't answer those questions. You just didn't make the attempt, right? Versus if you were to take a test realistically and only answer 6 questions, well, you still got 6 out of 10. That's a 60%. Those are very different numbers or results that you're looking at, right? So it's just factoring in, like what Joel said, the consistency.
Yeah, you can't skip over failure and say that it would never happen, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the way exit velocity is calculated. And so we just kind of created a version that is a little bit more indicative of who puts the bat on the ball at the end of the day.
Do one more of those. I think one of my favorites is impact slugging. So
Of course, like it's really interesting that you bring up that one, because we posted it on the page, and then we've had a data analyst come aboard, and then a bunch of players from the like alumni association. Like we've been talking to Kenny Lofton a lot about this one, and we derived a far superior version of that stat that we're going to probably release in the next month or so, that has pretty much what it says is that a player, modern day 3 true outcomes player who is striking out, walking, or hitting a home run, right? Like it's 3 true outcomes, right? But you can't drive in unless the bases are loaded. You're not getting an RBI from a walk, and you're never getting an RBI from a strikeout. So a player nowadays who's striking out 120 and walking 120, that's 240 times that a star level player is coming up to the plate and is completely incapable of getting an RBI. So what the idea of impact slugging did was it tries to promote that putting the ball in play can create tremendously good things, even though you resulted in an out. You've got runners on first and second. You hit a deep ball to right field. Both runners advance. That is far better than a strikeout, right? But there's no quantification of those types of base running movement in the game. So we tried to create impact slugging, which in the version that you at least see on the page is trying to quantify clutch. Is at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do, is quantify clutch. Players who are capable of simply hitting the ball.
So, Brooke, you've done some traveling this year. Do you want to talk about some of your travels?
Yes, quite a bit of traveling. So the biggest one that we did this year was Joel and Perry and I, all 3 of us actually, went to the Dominican Republic. Joel and I went there to film a docu-series about Dominican baseball, the culture out there, the identity, and that's where we actually met Perry. And Perry can explain his travels out there and exactly what he was doing. But really, because like what I'd mentioned earlier, we're trying to do more long form content, get into the narrative space. We had an opportunity where one of the winter ball teams in the Dominican had reached out to us in about mid-December saying, hey, if you come out here, we'll get you player access and we'll get you stadium access. And we're sitting there like, sure. Yeah, we could do something with that.
It's Christmas time. Let's just go to the Dominican.
Let's figure that out. And so 2 weeks later, our bags are packed and we're in the Dominican, and we spent a month there over 3 different trips because one of the trips was interrupted with me going to ABCA, and I was at that convention for 3 days for American Baseball Coaches Association, which is where I interviewed Joe Girardi, and then came back to the Dominican and spent some time. We got to interview Carlos Pena, who Perry knows very well. He's the GM of Escogido down in the Dominican Republic, as well as an iconic player. And then also interviewing Miguel Tejada, which is interesting, right? Because both of those players were also in Moneyball. We mentioned Mr. Moneyball earlier. And then we did get to spend a week with Dale Murphy, two-time NL MVP with the Braves. So it was just the Dominican Republic was really opening its doors for us. We got to spend time with the commissioner out there. And it was really this time where we were putting together this narrative story about why is baseball so strong? Why are the fans and the players so passionate that come from the Dominican Republic, such a small island of about 10 million people that make up 10 to 20% of MLB? Why is that so? So we really started grassroots, going from youth organizations like the Manny Mota Foundation with kids as young as 7 years old. Perry was actually coaching at, coming in as a guest coach at a private academy down there. We went to some MLB academies, Dodgers for International Signing Day. And then all the way up to I was in Miami for the WBC watching Team Dominican just kill it on the field. And so it was just this huge journey of understanding all the different dynamics and nuances that goes into this country. And we're excited. We're excited to release it. We have one episode done. We are working on the remaining 9, and it at a baseline will be released on YouTube, but there might be other places that we get it out to.
Very good. And since you mentioned Perry, let's let Perry tell about some of his experiences in the Dominican, and why were you there, and how did you come across Joel and Brooke?
We were at Next Level Academy, and I was doing a little favor for one of the local academies. We were helping some young kids, and I knew that they were going to be there, but I had no idea who they were, and so I had no idea what to expect. So we just kind of dove in and started doing some instruction with the young players, and these guys were amazing. They immediately were like, okay, let's do this, let's capture this, and it was just all, fly by the seat of the pants a little bit, but what these guys captured was very cool stuff. We had some kids that were struggling. I was telling Joel, look at his foot and watch what's happening right now. Watch what happens when he changes that. And then he would change that, and then everything. He would just start smashing balls. And so that part of it was very cool. We started talking in between and afterwards about some of the higher level stuff that we were doing with Escogido. Carlos Pena, I was his only hire last year. He became the GM. He's a former client of mine. I worked with him the year that he led the American League in homers and missed a month of the season, and was the hottest hitter in the sport for about 3 months. But Carlos was amazing. He got the GM job, and he's like, hey, I want you to come down there. And I go, are you serious? Well, why? And he goes, trust me on this. You need to come down. So I packed for 2 weeks. I'm thinking, no way are these major league players going to listen. Coaches, they're not going to pay attention. There's a language gap. My sons speak about 20 languages between them. I speak barely English. A little bit of French maybe, but I knew no Spanish. For the first week I got there, it was just da 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 da. And I couldn't even pick out one word for the first week I was there.
I'm Banyo going into it, so I was one up.
So Carlos and I were kind of swimming upstream, meaning we were doing kind of what Moneyball was trying to do, which is we were trying to introduce a new concept. Effective velocity is basically, it's every modern pitching metric that you've heard has stemmed from effective velocity. We were the first ones to introduce exit velocity and launch angle to the sport. And we did it based on trying to get to the bottom of arguments, like which player is better at the college level when I was coaching way back when. And where we ended up was working with Carlos, trying to get him to focus on putting the ball in play, because he came to me and said, I'm a slugger and I want to become a hitter. I want to win the Triple Crown. I want to convert from that just running into balls on occasion. He was a 3 outcome guy for sure, walked 100 times, had a high on base percentage. He had more homers than singles one year, which was a crazy year. But when I worked with Carlos, my role with him was looking at pitchers, taking apart what their game plan was based on the mistakes that they make with deception. So we were kind of creating cheat codes that they still quite haven't figured out yet. But what we were doing was pretty 15 or 18 years ahead of its time, I think. They're catching up now a little bit, but at that time, we knew about the rise effect that was happening. We even had a counter for that. There was a lot of very cool stuff. I got my PhD in timing working with Carlos because I had a chance to pick apart every pitcher and find out all of the mistakes that they were going to make from a deception standpoint. So effective velocity is basically location adjusted speed. So when a hitter hits a ball on the inside part of the plate, they have to hit it about 18 inches out in front of home plate if they're going to do damage. They can hit it deeper, but it's always going to be at a cost. And so the up and in fastball at 95 is really about 100 effective velocity miles per hour. And the fastball that's away at 95, down and away, is about 90 effectively. So the reactionary time is about 10% different. So when pitchers make mistakes with how they use their effective velocity, we would take big advantage. CC Sabathia, for example, would throw about 95 up and away to Carlos, and then he would throw a sinker that had a perfect tunnel, only he threw it about 92 and it was middle in. So if we sat on up and away fastball, the 92 fastball was 95 inside, the up and away version of the fastball was 95, so they ended up being the same exact reactionary time. So we would get 2 for 1 there. And every time a pitcher throws pitches in a down and away fastball, for example, and then a slider or a curveball, they would have this immediate pop out of the hand. So we would pick those kinds of things out, and honestly, it felt like cheating. He hit a homer every 8.5 at bats, and his batting average went up 25%, strikeouts went down 25%, and that was a pretty fun period.
Yeah. Well, thank you for explaining that, and I'll come back to you in a second. But I did want to ask Joel a question here because you so you were involved in putting together some video content about some pitchers that allegedly cheated. And one of your videos that I wanted to show right now was Shane Bieber, who was a Cy Young winner, and Cleveland Guardian. I'm a longtime Cleveland Guardian fan, so how could you?
I'm sorry. I'm Canadian, so he pitches for the Jays now. So I feel the same way. What have I done?
Yeah.
What have I done? But
yeah, well, I'm going to share my screen if I can here, and we'll take a look at the posts that you put together. Let's see here. Let's see. We gotta go here and.
This is video on Shane Bieber, who back in 2020 was using Spider Tack to win his Triple Crown and Cy Young. This is obvious evidence right here that you can see of him diving into his glove for foreign substance to increase his spin rate, to increase his K rate, and make him one of the nastiest pitchers in baseball in the last 20 years. 2020 Shane Bieber was as nasty as Pedro and Randy Johnson were in their prime, and here's video that I shot back in 2021 making it rather evident that that's what he was doing. Can't put all the blame on him, though, because Major League Baseball changed the balls in 2019, which led to a drastic increase in home runs. So this was the counteract that pitchers did. They went and started using foreign substances to drastically increase their spin rate. And as you can see right here, it's very evident. And the numbers are staggering. This is him in 2020 when he was using it, and you can see the fall off across pretty much all of his numbers. His chase rate, his whiff rate, his spin rate absolutely fell off the table, pretty much like his curveball did in 2020. In 2020, when he won the Triple Crown, he was elite across the board. Look at these numbers. And then in 2023, when the ban was instituted, you can see that decrease, and it is absolutely staggering. This also probably led to his injuries, and that's why he hasn't been on the field that much over the last few years. They were doing a foreign substance video on
I feel so bad for doing that now. But there was just a time in the game, it was about over a year and a half, where it had gotten really, really bad. Foreign substance was everywhere. And like my page back then did it from the perspective of, it's not that I just wanted more offense. I felt like defense on the field was something that had been completely decreased. When you know that 15, 20, 25% of outs are now, there's 15, 25% more strikeouts, meaning less amazing plays in the outfield, less amazing catches, less double plays, less, whatever the amazing defensive play was, they were gone. And then there was a lot, strangely enough, in a time period where analytics had pretty much proven that you don't hit a batter, it's only negative. You don't get a home run hit on you and then hit him the next time up. We've like kind of excluded the concept of intentionally hitting batters. You understand that like in the 1970s, when they did intentionally hit batters, they were hitting them half as much as they were in peak foreign substance years. So it's just like some of those pitches were really getting out of hand in how you control them, especially certain fastballs were cutting and breaking in ways that pitchers had never had them break before. So you've seen guys getting hit in the head, and I didn't like that at all. And then weirdly enough, you haven't really seen too much of that in the last 4 years, which I kind of smile at sometimes. But yeah,
We do smile at it because when we go to baseball games and you see the pitchers get checked before they go into the mound, or sometimes after, Joel and I will just sit there, we go, check them. Which is, it was a situation where Joel, he did get hate mail. He got a lot of negativity coming towards it, but at the end of the day, it was really because he saw something in the game that it didn't make the game better as a whole. It made it a lot more boring too, and it was a lot more dangerous for your batters. And so doing something like that was to be able to
level the playing field.
Exactly. Level the playing field is the best way to put it.
It's something that we talk about a lot on the page, is that we look at WAR. Like WAR is kind of the defining stat that you use to figure out if a player is good or not. And, 62 WAR, you're starting to get in that Hall of Fame conversation. And we talk about how players like in the steroid era who had played their entire careers, we use Kenny Lofton as an example. He played 15, 16 years in the steroid era, being weighted and graded in a WAR standpoint against a league that wasn't a level playing field, right? So you sit there at the end of your career and you realize, well, this number that defines me, the playing field wasn't level. So if a player's ability is really 10 to 15% higher if you're clean through a cheating era, you realize that a guy like Kenny Lofton, who goes from being a 65 WAR player to being potentially an 80 WAR player, a Ken Griffey Jr. goes from an 80 WAR player to potentially a 100 WAR player, which makes a lot more sense for a guy with 630 home runs and 10 Gold Gloves in a row. But we kind of, from the standpoint of the page and what I had been doing earlier, I lived through the steroid era and how it took 15, 16 years to be addressed and for there to be an entire tarnished generation. And when it came to foreign substance, it felt like it had been used for, don't get me wrong, like Whitey Ford was cutting the ball and the Necro brothers and all that stuff going all the way back in time. It's always been used, but it was being used from a chemistry standpoint of using spider tack to drastically increase spin rates. And it wasn't putting some pine tar on the ball. It was putting this like chemically orchestrated substance on to turn average into exceptional and exceptional into purely unhittable. So I think that was dealt with pretty quickly. And nobody really talks about it. Nobody's sitting there saying, hey, this guy shouldn't be a Hall of Famer because he used this. So I think that it was a scandal that was very quickly dealt with that doesn't have a long lasting tarnish element to the game, which I guess I was slightly part of.
You were.
Very, very good. Well, I'm looking at the clock, and I wanted to open this up to our audience to ask some questions of all of you.
Terry, not to interrupt. So if anybody has a question, just use your React feature and raise your hand. We have one in the chat to start with, so if you guys have a question, just raise your hand. But we got one from Jamie. Jamie says he wants to know what your take is on war. We saw some of your posts where you feel war may be a flawed metric, and I think a lot of folks agree with you. So you want to speak a bit more about that?
Yeah, so with the post on war, which we actually, I think, just released one today on Olerud, but it's the concept of like it's a singular stat that somehow determines if somebody gets in the Hall of Fame right now or not. And we feel like it's a little bit flawed because if you take the steroid era, for instance, where you have clean guys playing against at one point a majority of the league doing PEDs or taking PEDs, you're not really comparing apples to apples at that point. So Kenny Lofton being the player that we brought up a couple times because we've had a lot of conversations with him about this, about how being a player of a specific ilk and feeling like I feel like I'm better than the number that is defining me right now, but not knowing why that is. That's like where we've come in to step into the conversation about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, and you see, especially in the John Olerud post that we put up today, is a really good example of it, because then you get into a specific position and you realize, well, if you're being compared to first baseman in that time period, well, obviously there were a lot of steroids in that time period, but positionally, first base, I'm not going to name names, but we all understand that first base was slugging at a rate back then that was pretty exceptional. So it even becomes far more positional for certain players. And another one, like, I'm not going to just use Blue Jays first baseman, but like to look at a guy like Carlos Delgado and look where he is on the all-time OPS list. Look where he is, all-time home runs. Like, you're talking about a player who's a better hitter than Bryce Harper, and he's not on the Hall of Fame because you'll tell me that he's a 40 WAR player. I'm like, there's some statistics that it absolutely baffles me on what WAR will do to some seasons and then what it'll do to others. So it's interesting. I get the idea of doing something that's all encompassing, but at the same time, there are just things to me that seem incredibly out of place, especially when you can't guarantee a level playing field in some scenarios, especially that, really.
Well, so you might throw Joey Votto into that conversation too.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie, you have a question.
Yeah, I was just going to say, following up on that as well, if I recall, you made an adjustment to WAR similar to your exit velocity adjustment that relates to their ability to stay on the field. And as a huge Mike Trout fan, I did not appreciate that.
Hey, I grew up with the Angels. I love the Angels, and I grew up watching Trout. So it's when we create the different statistics and even just like we like to point things out that sometimes people are not situationally aware of. You could probably talk about that statistic a little bit more in depth, the one that he's talking about. But yeah, like when we see Trout, for instance, nowadays he's not the same Trout, and it's he's had so many injuries and stuff too. But I think there's a little bit more in him that if he was just swinging at the first pitch, for instance.
Oh my God. That's all we say around my house is swing at the first pitch.
It feels like one of those things, like I'm watching him, Joel and I are watching him, and we sit there and we're like, I feel like a lot of people say that, right? Like you're sitting there with your family and you're just like, just swing, Mike, just swing. And I would love to have a conversation with him. But we've talked to some people that work within the Angels organization that have said that they've shown him our posts. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if anything happens.
So if any of you can't use the raise hand feature for some reason, or if you're in your car or whatever, just feel free to shout out a question. While you guys are thinking, do you mind if I ask a question? So I saw a post you had about two metrics, one called V-Slug, one called volume OPS, which probably are more comprehensive and more telling than traditional OPS. You want to talk a bit about those two?
Yeah, so when we had mentioned that we had an all-encompassing stat that was going to be coming out really, really soon, this takes like impact slugging, volume slugging. We even did a pass on it to include base running ability because we have this weird concept that hitting doesn't stop when you reach base. If that makes that's the weirdest thing to say, but from it really disconnects a player who isn't going to take that extra base. That ability a player has, I always use Lofton just because we're talking and working with him a lot lately. But like the player that can take a 2-out base hit and in a crazy scenario go first to home, right? Like that skill set isn't so much appreciated in the way that we quantify OPS specifically. We sit there and on base and slugging, and it honestly, Perry does. We live in a world where we look to quantify a baseball player in so many different ways, and Perry, it's so great because of the relationship we have with him. Perry doesn't care about the result in the way that baseball analyzes. He only cares about the ball. Is it barreled? Is it the exit velocity there? Is the ball being hit hard? Everything else, whether it's caught, whether it goes out, everything else is left to kind of chance in his world. So whatever your batting average is and all of that, it's not as indicative of what your process is in the way that you play the game. So it's really, really interesting for us. Like when you bring up V slug and those stats, I think we try to do. I think our singular goal is to bring back the respect for batting average, right? Like we feel like when you're a 3 true outcomes guy, you fall apart come postseason time. Postseason time rolls around and walks go up, or walks go down, strikeouts go up, and home runs disappear. And if you're a guy like I use Jeter, for example, he hit 300 in the regular season. He hit 300 in the postseason. You knew what you were going to get. There was a guy who hit and he hit universally as opposed to a guy who feasts and famines on a below 500 team's number 5 starter, right? I put up a 2-homer game with 2 doubles and I slugging percentage way up, but I'm never going to face that guy in the postseason. So I guess what we're trying to do is promote a style that's more indicative of a hitter that can hit everything that's being thrown to him, that has a high batting average, a high clutch ability. And then come postseason time, when you're facing elite arms, you don't go 0 for 15 with 11 strikeouts.
Any other questions from the panel?
I'll ask a question. Brooke and Joel, first of all, thanks for doing this. Super fun, super cool. We've talked a lot about stats, of course. But, we also mentioned the storytelling aspect of it and how cool that is. And at Saber, whether you know it or not, obviously there's a lot of people that love the stat part of it, but a lot of members are more into it, into the storytelling and the incredible stories about, every major leaguer that's ever played. As you have, created content, what is one of your favorite stories or things you've learned about a player or an event in baseball that just kind of blows your mind? This could be something maybe you created content for, Brooke, or maybe not. Maybe it'll be future content. But what's one story that sticks out to you?
I would say probably the greatest game ever pitched, because I'm gonna let you fill in some of the blanks here, but 16 shutout innings. Just saying that in and of itself, it's just like that's completely unheard of. We're lucky if
Marichal Spawn, 1963, just for specifics on that.
Park.
Yeah.
And there was a 16 shutout inning game between Marischal and Spawn, and it's this game that just like the storytelling aspects of it are so intricate because it's an older generation against the young newcomer that's just trying to earn his stripes, and it's almost like the battle between two generations, right? Because you have generation cultures too, right? An American war hero, for instance, Marischal being a Dominican icon, and you have these two mindsets that are like, well, I'm not going to let that old pops beat me, and then the other one's like, I'm not going to let some young little thing try to beat me, and just having like that type of grit, and it's just such a fun story to talk about that some people know of, but a lot of people actually don't know about it. That's one of the fun ones that we had. And then just another one, I know you just said one, but was more of just like the in-person experience that we had going down to the Dominican Republic and experiencing what baseball was like down there. That's a story that we really haven't touched upon or released yet because Joel and I are in the middle of post-production for that docu-series that we created. And Perry, I'm really interested to hear like your background in, or rather your experience going from I'm going to be in the Dominican for 2 weeks to what was it, like 4 months that you were out there for? 5. So yeah, share with you, because I can talk about it for so long and we were only there for a month, but like share with us what that was like, not having spoken the language, but just knowing the language of baseball.
Well, thankfully, all the players almost and all the coaches could speak English.
So that's a good starting point.
Well, I thought I'd be there 2 weeks because I didn't think that major league players and major league coaches would pay close attention. I thought I would be there, give a few talks, and then I'd be out. But instead, every guy was just locked in. It was kind of like I think of the Dominican. They had 6 teams there and about 100 guys on each roster. And you could pick a major league, if you picked an all-star team out of that, I guarantee you they compete at the major league level right now. It was unbelievable. The talent level was off the charts. So for me personally, it was awesome because you're getting interaction every day with players. I had a moment with Alexander Canario. He had hit 37 homers for the Pirates a couple of years earlier, and now here he is in the Dominican. He's hitting right about 100. He hasn't put a ball in play. He's striking out 2 or 3 times a night and hitting missile pop-ups. And we spent like 20 minutes in the cage and did some things that were a little different than what he'd heard. And he went on a tear, hit 5 homers in 6 games, and got signed by Japan. Jorge Mateo is another kid that's playing with the Braves now. That was hitting about a 120 at the time. So for me, it was like the island of misfit toys. All these amazing guys, and they're a tweak away from being major league stars again. And so I fell in love with that part. We had the rooftop at the hotel that I stayed at. They had a rooftop bar, and I would go up there and have dinner and hang out with some of the players, and we would talk about effective velocity or whatever was happening at that night. And it was, that part was probably the most fun, was being able to interact with Jose Urquidy and a bunch of guys that were right on the fence of maybe going back to the big leagues. So for me, that was the most fun, was that whole interaction. Trying to get to the coaches was a little bit difficult, but the players were unbelievably wide open. The coaches actually were really open too. So that's why I ended up staying 5 months instead of two weeks like I expected. But it was fantastic. If you ever get a chance to go down there and watch baseball, it is unbelievably close to major league level.
It's insane.
It is major league level.
I had no idea, Perry. Like when we went down there, it was really spontaneous, and it is very much 4A ball. You're looking at Geraldo Perdomo is playing shortstop, and Brian Dela Cruz and Eloy Jimenez, and like it's they're really good baseball players all over the place, and it's and talk about like a cheap ticket, an amazing environment to watch baseball. And
fans are just so loud. There's the Toros specifically, the they have a live band that they just have playing throughout the whole game and cheering. And it's just funny because I was not expecting that whatsoever. And then I was like, wait, that's happening like right behind us. It's not from the speakers right now.
Feels something like out of Ebbets Field from like the 1940s or something. It has that kind of feel to it, and it's really great. If you ever have an opportunity to go, definitely do it.
I think we just decided on what our next Sabre road trip's going to be. ZR.
There you go. Wait, actually, I have to say, if you're going to go to the Dominican, don't drive yourself though, because the way that their roads work and it's like a lawlessness that everybody that was raised there knows. But then if you're an foreigner, you're just like, what is happening right now?
There are no rules on the road.
Yeah.
We deemed it the city of no rules.
Yes.
Because you see like 10,000 violations on your way to the park every day. It's unbelievable.
Well, Joe is from New Jersey, so he could handle
He's
it.
totally used to it, no problem. All right, it's 8 o'clock. Any last questions for you guys? Well, Kerry, fantastic job moderating. Thank you so much for pulling this together. Brooke, Joel, and Perry, absolutely fantastic. We're going to put this out on our website, our YouTube channel, and out to national as well, so everyone can enjoy. And if you ever find yourself in the state of Colorado, you are more than welcome to come to one of our chapter meetings and speak us. We would love to have you guys. So thanks very much.
Her sister's from Colorado.
Yeah, my sister's in Colorado, so you might see me out there.
Very
Thanks so
good.
much, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Thanks a lot.
you.
Thanks a lot, guys.